This is breaking news.
Mayor de Blasio giving an update on coronavirus in New York City. Let's go to that now.
Aside with us sharing space, giving us real time, tracing back where these firearms are coming from, and hopefully it'll be a prevention for proliferation of illegal guns on our streets. We've expanded community solution programs, a strategy that uses community-based organizations, city services, and the NYPD response to connect community members to resources and improve their neighborhoods. With that, we're expanding out ShotSpotter, if you're familiar with that, by 8.78 square miles. Currently, we cover 69 square miles citywide. There are a total of over 1,500 sensors. For the month of, I should say year-to-date for the past 3 months, we had 3,444 activations. With that, 565 were confirmed. What confirms that? Whether we discover ballistics or if there's a shooting victim. Out of the 565, 94 were confirmed shooting victims. In 89 incidents, 41 arrests were made and 44 firearms recovered. Good numbers there. We're also relaunching our Ceasefire, a program that uses credible messengers to deliver strong messages to high-risk populations with the goal of decreasing violence without increasing arrests and incarceration. Also, the gun buyback program. We've actually campaigned for that. I believe we conducted 3 year-to-date, resulting in 75 more guns taken off the street. And more importantly, we have a campaign that's being launched in the confines of the 4th Precinct, the Bronx Borough, on May 8th. And that information is on our social media, whether it's Twitter, FaceTime, things of that nature. Also, I'd like to mention a couple of takedowns that you're going to see. One yesterday that'll probably be spoken about by the Bronx District Attorney. Another one this morning in the confines of the Bronx. When we take down gangs of this nature, we're taking down sometimes 20 members, even if it's 10 members, and it results in a significant reduction in violence. This is accomplished with our federal partners. I believe the Bronx Southern District in the Bronx is handling the individuals arrested from the 800 YG crew, and they're facing up to 20 years for some of the gun violence and other charges that were committed. So all of this combined is going to have an effect on violence, period, in the city of New York. I just want to say we hear you. We've increased probably about 73,000 more 311 calls, and those complaints are being addressed. And whether it's something simple as noise complaints or to ATVs. Another focus in the city, ATVs, dirt bikes. Listen, you use it, you're going to lose it. We've started a campaign on April 20th, and we've confiscated over 131 ATVs and dirt bikes. And we've identified 5 locations of congregation. 2 of these locations resulted in a homicide involving ATVs and dirt bikes. So I just want to say that these are some of the strategies that we're using, and it should have a tremendous impact on our crime in New York City.
Thank you so much, Chief. And Chief, thank you for pointing out all the strategies that are being put into place now. These are a lot of strategies that have worked historically. They're being deepened now. But very importantly, Chief Holmes talked about the incredible work that officers under her command and so many of the officers in NYPD working with the courts, working with the DAs, are achieving. You're going to be hearing a lot more news about gang takedowns. This is crucial. You know, we always say there's a very small number of people in this city committing the acts of violence, and it's really important to recognize this. 8.5 million New Yorkers. It's a few thousand people that cause the most serious problems. When you start to get those folks out of commission because of successful prosecutions, it makes all the difference. So again, you'll be hearing a lot more about this in the coming days, but very, very exceptional efforts are being made to get these violent gang members off the streets, and that's going to have a big impact on what we do this summer. So thank you, Chief, to you and your whole team for all the strategies you're putting in place. Okay. Now, when we talk about recovery, of course, we have to talk about vaccination. So every day I give you the numbers, and what I really appreciate is that every day they move substantially. We definitely have to do more and more to make it easier, to make it more accessible for people to get vaccinated, to make it more fun. We got a lot to do to reach out to people, but all that notwithstanding, the numbers keep moving all the time. And that is very, very important for the future ahead, for our July 1st full reopening, for the summer of New York City, which we are all going to experience together. So, as of today, 6,809,451 doses given from the beginning. And when you think in terms of first doses where we know overwhelmingly about 95% of folks come back and get that second dose, this now puts us almost 75% of the way to our 5 million person goal for the end of June. So at this point, we have about 3.7 million New Yorkers have gotten at least a first dose. Puts us, again, about 75% to our goal in terms of first doses. This is really good progress. We need to consolidate this progress, keep it moving. Now, to do that, we need incredibly energetic people out there helping everyone know about vaccination, answering their questions, letting them know it's easy, it's convenient. We need people to go above and beyond the call. And a few days ago, we got a report from Juliet Papa of 1010 Wins, and she said in Times Square she saw this extraordinary woman out there promoting vaccines. She said, "I think I found New York City's first vaccine hawker." And we were all really immediately interested. Our team went out to find her. We found her. And I want to say in advance, you're going to see a video of her work. Tanika Price, she is amazing. She works at the 20 Times Square vaccine site. She goes out there. She makes a difference. She literally just goes on out there, connects with people, talks to them, brings them in. She's a nurse doing extraordinary work to protect her fellow New Yorkers. And this is also a great moment to say Happy Nurses Day. Everybody, this is the day we celebrate nurses. They have been amongst the greatest heroes of the fight against COVID. Anybody in your life who's a nurse, thank them today. If you see a nurse today, anywhere you are, thank them because they've done amazing, amazing work for all of us. So, Tanika Price represents the best of the best, making a difference for her fellow New Yorkers. I want you to see her live in action on this video.
Second dose vaccines and testing 20 times a year. We've got vaccination, we've got testing on site, we're giving out free masks. What we're doing is on the ground work, spreading the word that we do first and second dose Pfizer vaccines free of charge. Go right now. We have 322 appointments today. My job is just to advocate for the patient, advocate for NYC. That's one of the reasons why I go out on the streets, recruit people in real time that will just walk up and take the vaccine. I know that there's people that either don't have the information or want to get vaccinated. I can spend anywhere from 5 minutes to a half an hour to even an hour down here each day. It really depends on how many more doses we have left inside. We do have the doses to vaccinate everybody if necessary, and that's what's important. So you've got the naked cowboys, the panda, Iron Man, and you got me, right? Have you been vaccinated?
No, I haven't been vaccinated. You want to take my naked ass over?
Right now, let's go.
Oh, boy. I'm the naked cowboy. I'm getting the vaccine. It's not that big a deal. Let's take care of everyone else. Thank you, buddy. That wasn't so bad.
Today kind of was a fluke. We got the naked cowboy to come in. I've vaccinated everyone in the businesses on the block. People come back and say, I've told my wife, my children, my community centers about your location, and it really makes a difference to me. I find that most people that haven't been vaccinated as yet aren't vaccinated because they have questions that are unanswered. I'm answering their questions in real time, and as a nurse, that makes me proud. I'm just doing my part, whether it's a vaccine hawker or a nurse, whatever it takes. It's all about that community and doing what you can for your immediate community wherever you are.
much do you love that? That is a true New Yorker. Tanika, I wish we were talking to her right now, but I am so proud of you, Tanika. That is what a New Yorker does. You go out, you make it happen, and just a beautiful example of someone who cares, someone who's making a difference. And listen, people just need to hear it's important. It's here. It's easy. And she certainly got some interesting people to come in and get vaccinated. So well done, Tanika, and we want to see a lot more of that going forward in this city. And we also recognize, talking about Times Square, of course we think about New Yorkers, but we also think about tourists. We want tourism back. We're doing a huge effort to bring tourism back. We talked about a few days ago, big $30 million campaign to get the tourists back to New York City. This summer, you're going to see tourism come alive again in New York City. You're going to see a lot of jobs come back because of it. We want to go the extra mile, make it easy for tourists. If they're here, get vaccinated while you're here. It makes sense to put mobile vaccination sites where the tourists are. That is good for all of us that they get vaccinated. It's good for them. It's another reason to be here and know you're going to be taken care of. So we're going to be setting up these mobile vaccination sites where tourists go. We'll be using the J&J vaccine. We'll be in Times Square, Brooklyn Bridge Park, Central Park, the High Line, a variety of locations. And we're going to be working with the state of New York. We need the state to alter the rule that will allow us to provide vaccination to folks from out of town. But we think this is a positive message to tourists. Come here, it's safe, it's a great place to be, and we're going to take care of you. We're going to make sure you get vaccinated while you're here with us. So this is going to start as soon as we get that approval. We're ready to go this weekend. We want to welcome more and more people into the vaccination effort. Okay, now, talk about a recovery for all of us. A recovery for all of us means, of course, bringing back the jobs. And there are so many people who lost their jobs and need any opportunity they can get. And we do see the economy's coming back strong. That's great. It's really extraordinary. We do see jobs coming back, but we got to supercharge that. And we're looking for every opportunity to give people a chance to get back on their feet. Now, last month we talked about the Community Cleanup Corps. That is going to be amazing. It's not only giving jobs to 10,000 New Yorkers, it's going to help beautify the city as we come back. It's modeled on the extraordinary creation from President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the Civilian Conservation Corps, part of the New Deal. That's where we got the inspiration for the City Cleanup Corps. That's going to make a huge difference. But now we take another page out of FDR's book. One of the other great acts of the New Deal was the Works Progress Administration, WPA, created the Federal Arts Project. I have heard from members of my own family what this meant. It is so powerful that the federal government, in the midst of the depression, said we're going to employ artists, we're going to help them stay on their feet, but it's also going to inspire the whole community. And amazing things came out of that effort. It gave people hope in a moment of tremendous challenge. And we all know so many artists struggle. So many artists struggle to make ends meet even in the best of times, but they've been hit so hard by the pandemic. We want to reach out to artists, and we take inspiration from the New Deal because it was not only about helping people to survive the Depression, it also led to amazing opportunities for great artists. Jackson Pollock, he started his work with support of the WPA. Dorothea Lange, who documented in photography and the conscience of the nation, documented poverty of farm workers in California. John Stewart Curry, who created murals that defined that era of history. All of them supported through the New Deal. Eleanor Roosevelt looked at some of the sites in New York City. She called this a splendid enterprise that really changed people's lives but uplifted communities. So we're going to take inspiration from that model and bring it to today. So today we announce the City Artist Corps. The City Artist Corps is going to employ artists. As part of the comeback in New York City, we're investing $25 million to employ over 1,500 artists to help bring back arts and culture all over New York City. We're going to hire artists, musicians, performers. They're going to be out in communities doing public art, public performances, pop-up shows through the Summer Rising program, so many different elements at the grassroots, creating murals, you name it. We want to give artists opportunity, and we want this city to feel the power of our cultural community again. Here to tell you about it, someone who feels very, very strongly that the arts are going to lead New York City back in our recovery. Our Commissioner for the Department of Cultural Affairs, Gonzalo Casals.
Buenos dias, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this extraordinary commitment to artists in New York City. This is a historic investment in artists by the city of New York, probably the largest in a generation, and we're very excited about this announcement. I wanted to tell you three very quick stories of why this is important and why this, what would it mean, for New York City. Last summer, artists TJ Mohammed and Sophia Dawson, along with many artists, designed and painted one of the many Black Lives Matter pavement murals that inspire so many New Yorkers. Their work lifts up the urgent message that lives of our BIPOC fellow New Yorkers matter. At the same time, Amanda Pindobobakia, who is in residency at the Commission for Human Rights, created a series of posters that were put all over the city portraying Asian American Pacific Islanders individuals with messages combating Asian discrimination. I cannot tell you how powerful it is to see yourself reflected in society and to see yourself affirmed in such a public way. It's great also to see that Amanda's work ended up being featured in the cover of Time magazine for the strong message that this community in particular still believes in our city. At the peak of the pandemic, artists Sinia Diente and Jacqueline Reyes, working with the Landromat Project, created a network of mutual aid support for residents in Little Manila in Woodside, Queens. Just take a moment now to imagine our city with thousands of artists like Amanda, Sophia, TJ, Sinia, Jacqueline, out there in their communities, inspiring, empowering, and really celebrating New Yorkers. This is exactly what is at the core of this program, and this is exactly the vision that we want for this program. So we want to put artists back to work so they can go out in every community in New York City and engage New Yorkers in fun, enriching cultural experiences this summer. Imagine open culture streets, parks, DOT plazas, and so many other public spaces across the city brought to life by this program and by the work that our artists have been doing. As the mayor said before, there is no equitable recovery of our city without investing in the cultural sector. When you invest in arts and culture, you're investing in hospitality sector, the nightlife and entertainment sector, tourism, retail, you name it. In addition, not only is an economic engine, but it's also the presence of arts and culture and community makes for safer, healthier, and more cohesive communities. So we want to make sure that artists are at the core of this positive impact of our city, and we want to help them by putting funds in their pockets to do the amazing work they have been doing for decades. We're still working through details on how this program will be implemented, and we'll have more to say in the weeks ahead. But let's be sure that this is not only going to be the summer of New York City, it's going to be the summer of arts. And this is going to be all thanks to the city's investment to the City Artists Corps. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. You and I got the Summer of Arts started a little early by throwing powdered paint at each other at the Holy Festival. So I think we were a little ahead of the curve, but it's the beginning of something wonderful. So this is going to reach communities all over the city. And people are going to feel the presence of our beloved artists and performers and musicians again. And I want you to hear from someone who represents a community with a long history of street art, a long history of cultural figures living and thriving in his community in Bed-Stuy, one of the cultural well springs of this city. Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. My pleasure to introduce Councilmember Robert Cornegy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed. How you doing, Councilmember?
I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am so incredibly excited about this opportunity, not only for my community, but for the city of New York. There is no true recovery and resiliency plan, as you mentioned, that doesn't include vibrancy and the arts. Art has always, in this country, acted as a catalyst for change, and it's so beautiful that we are recognizing that and figuratively and literally putting money in the pockets of artists. I had the pleasure of having a Black Lives Matter mural in my district that we activated with art and culture and meditation, and even had a Black Loves Matter wedding on the mural, all illustrating how important it is and how valuable this is. So New York City has achieved such great wealth in part because of artistic residents. Clearly, funding the arts is a great fiscal investment. The money injected into the arts world has a multiplying effect on the economy. The Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights communities I represent have seen a multiplicity of benefits from those investments. I appointed an ambassador of arts and culture, devoting attention as a council office to the vibrant arts community in Central Brooklyn. Due to our collective efforts and advocacy, Weeksville Heritage Center is now a city cultural institution and has gotten a grant. Thank you so much to the mayor's office and to former Commissioner Finkelpearl for making that happen. Partnerships with artistic pillars like the Billie Holiday Theater and Restoration Art are important to our city. As a city council representative, it's my fiscal duty to be a sound steward of our budget. But there's an even more uplifting reason to make this investment. Our city has been through an emotional trauma that is not over. Are we going to grow from these experiences or be re-traumatized? I choose to rise up through our grief and our stress, and so do you, and our isolation, and find new ways to inspire the world. I choose to find new ways to inspire ourselves, and I choose to fully and passionately and emphatically support the Artist Corps. Today, we're not only making a fiscal investment, we're investing in our hope, we're investing in our beauty, we're sharing and saying to the world that our humanity as New Yorkers is worth celebrating. Thank you so much for this commitment, Mr. Mayor, and everybody involved. Bed-Stuy can't wait.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. And Councilmember, I remember with such warmth the day we gathered together with all the good folks painting the Black Lives Matter mural on Fulton Street. That was a really special moment, and it was community coming out, claiming together the space to create something beautiful and positive. And thank you for your leadership in making that happen. That's just the kind of example we are looking for of the things that will uplift people as part of our recovery. So thank you so much for your leadership, and look forward to painting some more together.
Absolutely. We'll both paint all of the up high portions of the mural.
That's right. That'll be our specialty. All right. Thank you so much. Now, I want to hear from two artists who can really give you the feeling of what this is going to mean to the community of artists and cultural workers, the folks who we revere them, but we also have to support them. And here are two voices who have been leaders in the efforts to make sure that all levels of government support the arts, especially as part of a recovery. First, the CEO of the National Black Theater, Sade Lithcott.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sade.
Mr. Mayor. How are you?
Good.
I loved seeing that video of Nurse Tamika Price. That is where I got vaccinated. So I was like, yes, it's working. But really, I really want to thank you for having me today. I want to thank Commissioner Casals. My name is Sade Lithcott. I am the CEO of the National Black Theater and the chair of Coalitions of Theaters of Color, a coalition that represents 52 cultural arts organizations across the 5 boroughs, most in communities hardest hit by COVID-19. However, CTC is more than just theaters. CTC organizations, especially in this past year, have functioned as safe haven for BIPOC artists within the communities they're located, serving millions of New Yorkers with vitally needed cultural, educational, social, and emotional resources to help enrich the lives of New Yorkers in local neighborhoods across the city and the outer boroughs. The most venerable author in my eyes, the great Toni Morrison, once said, "Times of dread are precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That's how civilizations heal." Today, the Creative Artists Corps marks a long and steady walk out of the darkness towards the light of a new day. As a native New Yorker, born and raised in the village of Harlem, the daughter of 2 artists, my mother, Dr. Barbara Ann Tier, who founded the National Black Theater in 1968, dedicated her life to serving and supporting Black artists. Like then, these uncertain times require us to find each other in bold, new, healing, and innovative ways to dig deeper and root ourselves in the unimagined possibility of what the future can and will hold. This has always been the artist's sacred oath, to digest, reflect back, and unrelentingly take hold of our hands, our hearts, and our minds to deliver us back to ourselves, piece by piece, until we are whole again. Artists and art workers, but artists in particular, are storytellers, but they're not magicians. The stories they courageously tell in their mediums on behalf of all of us is essential labor, and today we recognize, employ, and compensate them as such. This past year, as we all know, has been one filled with incredible loss. Artists and cultural workers have been one of the most hard-hit workforces. Much of the relief that has been made available during the pandemic has left the artists out of the equation altogether, but today that begins to change. So thank you, Mayor de Blasio, for your leadership in recognizing the role of artists as essential workers, essential to this great city we love so much, essential and inextricably linked not only to the economic recovery of our city, but to our souls. Recovery, like you just said, must be for all. I'd also like to just applaud the tireless work of Commissioner Casals and Commissioner de Castillo and the teams at CCLA and MOM. We look forward to continue to work together to center equity as this catalytic initiative rolls out. Thank you so very much.
Sade, I want to eat for breakfast whatever you're eating. You are just filled with energy and positive inspiration, so thank you. And I know you're going to help lead the way, taking this amazing idea, put it into action, and reaching those artists who need the help. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
All right, now I want to hear from another great leader of the cultural community, and she is passionate about the work we need to do to reach the artists who we need to keep in the city and to help thrive in the city. My pleasure to introduce the Executive Director of Dance NYC, Alejandra Duque Cifuentes.
Hello, good morning everyone, and thank you Mayor de Blasio and Commissioner Casals for having me. My name is Alejandra Duque Cifuentes and I am the Executive Director of Dance NYC. As the service organization for the dance industry in New York City, we work to ensure that independent dance workers, organizations, and for-profit businesses can thrive here in New York City. It's an honor to be here today and to celebrate this timely and necessary investment in the arts workforce and really extend our thanks to you all for your leadership in leaning into the voices and the needs of artists. It is well known that COVID-19 has had a catastrophic effect on our sector. Of the 50 states, New York is one of the hardest hit in terms of losses for the arts. A 2021 report from our very own comptroller found that 2/3 of all arts jobs in the city disappeared because of COVID. That's nearly 200,000 arts workers and their lives and their families that were impacted. And those losses continue to impact folks today. Even as the arts workforce continues to provide online arts education, digital performances, and engaging in mutual aid and vaccination efforts, those very artists haven't had access to the resources that allow them to maintain their basic human needs. And importantly, to have dignified wages that allow them to thrive. Of those impacted, Black, Indigenous, peoples of color, disabled, immigrant, and trans artists and workers have been the hardest hit. And yet the data shows that these very workers, working with the smallest budgets, are the lion's share of our sector and are the most adaptive and employ a workforce that represents the demography of our city, and yet have the least access to funding and support. In a climate that over this year has threatened our humanity and the well-being of so many New Yorkers, artists are playing a key role in organizing us, in sharing our stories, and in continuing to highlight the creative and cultural capacity of our city and our democracy. A healthy city needs healthy local communities, and local communities cannot recover or thrive without a strong arts and cultural presence. Artists are necessary workers. Let's therefore move beyond just simply valuing the product of art and value the arts workers that make it by creating policies and structures that ensure equitable funding, living wages, and a quality of life for the artistic communities that make New York City the cultural capital that it is today. While COVID did devastate our sector, the stop in activity has presented an opportunity to reimagine and set the groundwork for a new legacy of support in the arts. And the time is now really for this kind of bold legislation that will not just change the landscape of the arts in New York City, but also continue to position us as a leader in the nation and the world. I believe that this program is just such an exciting step in that direction, and what we hope to be the first of many concerted and long-term investments in the arts workforce. Thank you once again, Mayor de Blasio, the team, Commissioner Casals and Del Castillo for this groundbreaking work. And really, may we all continue to be New Yorkers for dance.
I love it. I love it. Alejandra, I'm going to say the same thing I said to Sade. I want to eat what you're having for breakfast because you're filled with energy too, and hope and vision. And I want to thank you for that, because the only way we move forward is with folks who really see a vision of what could be. We're already the great cultural capital of the world. We can go even farther. And Alejandra, thank you for your leadership and for inspiring us to keep moving forward. All right, everybody. Now it's the time of our briefing that everyone looks forward to, our indicators. And the indicators today are worth the wait because they are very, very good. Number one, daily number of people admitted to New York City hospitals for suspected COVID-19. Today's report, 121 patients. Again, we are well below the threshold, and it continues to look great. Confirmed positivity level has gone lower, 34.71%. Hospitalization rate continues to go down. This is crucial, 1.51 per 100,000, all excellent. And now, number two, new reported cases on a 7-day average. Again, look at that excellent downward slope, 1,030 cases. And they keep seeing a decline there. That's fantastic. And number three, percentage of people testing positive citywide for COVID-19. Today's report on a 7-day rolling average, 2.52%, and going down. So I always like to remind you, want to be a part of making those numbers keep going down? Go out and get vaccinated. Nurse Tanika and many other great folks are going to be out there to help you do it. This is the right day. If you haven't gotten vaccinated yet, this is the day to do it. Make a reservation or just walk on up to dozens of sites all over the city, including that great site in Times Square. Okay, a few words in Spanish, and I'll go back to the City Artist Corps. Recuperar una ciudad para todos incluye los artistas, actores y músicos que hacen cantar a nuestra ciudad. Estamos celebrando a los artistas que nos hacen grandes. El cuerpo de artistas de la ciudad va a crear trabajos y a hacer más hermosa nuestra ciudad. Las artes son el corazón y el alma de Nueva York. Están regresando más fuerte que nunca. With that, let's turn to our colleagues in the media, and please let me know the name and outlet of each journalist.
Good morning. We will now begin our Q&A. As a reminder, we are joined by Chief of Patrol Juanita Holmes, Cultural Affairs Commissioner Gonzalo Casals, Health Commissioner Dr. Dave Choksi, and President and CEO of Health and Hospitals, Dr. Mitch Katz. First up, we have Jennifer Peltz from AP.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
Good, Jennifer. How you been?
Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about vaccines and vaccinations. In light of the Biden administration's announcement this week that some doses will be reallocated from places that are not looking for them to places that are, is that affecting the city's plans? Is the city considering requesting less than its usual allocation when the next round goes in, I think as soon as today, of orders?
I'll turn to Dr. Choksi, but I'll say, Jennifer, I'd say the basic answer is no. We're doing the things that we need to do to protect New Yorkers, and that means getting more and more vaccinations done in more and more creative ways. You just saw one earlier today, and there's many more coming. So I think the fact is we want to have a steady supply. We need a certain amount in reserve to make sure we can always support our efforts, even if there's ever any slowdowns in supply. We're working on our goal, and there's a lot more New Yorkers we're going to be able to reach. I thought what Nurse Tanika said was really powerful, but sometimes people just need a conversation. And that's one of the things that Dave's been talking about doctors, pediatricians reaching out to their patients, and that's going to move a lot of people. So we need a healthy supply to ensure that we can reach everyone. Go ahead, Dr. Choksi.
Thank you very much, sir, and that's exactly right. We do plan to continue maximizing our order from the federal government with respect to vaccine supply, and that directly connects to the point that the mayor just made, which is it enables us to get more and more vaccine out into, we can think about it as the spokes in our hub and spoke model. That means doctors' offices, including community-based independent providers, neighborhood pharmacies, all of those smaller providers that people know and trust in their neighborhood. And if they're qualified to be able to store and handle vaccine, we want to get them vaccine so that they can get their patients and their customers vaccinated.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Sure, thank you. A follow-up question on that. Since the numbers of people getting vaccinated have gone down compared to a few weeks ago, are there circumstances where doses are expiring because they're going unused, or is that not happening?
I'll turn to Dr. Katz and Dr. Choksi. They'll each talk about the different efforts at their vaccination sites. I think the big picture here, Jennifer, is that is a rarity, and we certainly want to keep it that way. And we're going to continue to use, again, all sorts of creative ways to get more and more people in. Remembering that even though we've seen some slowdown, there's still a lot of people coming in to get vaccinated. And again, the fact that we are now at 3.7 million people have had at least one dose, pretty much all of them who have not yet gotten the second dose will. There's still lots and lots of demand. We've got a huge number of people coming in for their second doses alone. So we got the demand to keep using our supply effectively. But just to give you the sense of on the ground, Dr. Katz, followed by Dr. Choksi.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just as you said, the vaccine does not expire when it's kept in the freezer. So we keep our vaccines in the freezer until the time that we need to give them. So we don't have any worries. The lifespan of the vaccines in the freezer is on the order of months. So we're perfectly fine. That's not an issue for us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Dr. Choksi, you want to add?
Thank you, sir. Just to affirm that, in New York City, we are not in a situation where vaccines are expiring because, we're unable to use them. We continue to vaccinate at a good clip, and we will continue to do that and store vaccine in freezers and refrigerators, so that we can continue to use it for weeks and months beyond today.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Next, we have Juliet from 1010 Wins.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, all hail Nurse Price.
Yeah, Juliet, you get special honorable mention for finding her. You've done a great service to the public now that we can all see her amazing work. So thank you.
Oh, and thank you for the mention, and I'm so glad you found her. She's doing a great job there, and she's still doing it. It's fantastic. So I did want to follow up with that, too. Do you think there will come a time when you're going to have, let's say, permanent either vaccination or testing locations in the city in the event people need booster shots down the road for this? How would that work?
That's a great question. I'll turn to the doctors for their views. I think, look, first of all, in the future, my layman's view is it's going to resemble more how we handle flu shots because it's going to, COVID will be a part of the reality like the flu is, but it'll be a manageable part. But if it makes sense sort of for a transitional period of time to keep some of the centers open going forward, I think that makes a lot of sense. Dr. Katz, then Dr. Choksi.
Yes, sir. Certainly all of the health and hospitals facilities, both our inpatient and our outpatient, will always maintain the ability to do vaccinations. And I think you're right, sir, that there likely will be future boosters needed, just as there is with flu, and we'll be prepared to do those. And I'm sure as a city, we will keep open whatever facilities are necessary at different times in order to be able to vaccinate everyone who needs it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Dr. Choksi.
Yes, thank you, sir. And Juliet, thanks for the important question. Just as Dr. Katz said, we have in so many ways a permanent infrastructure already. It's our hospitals, but also our health centers, our pharmacies, all of the places where the everyday miracle of routine vaccination happens even when we're not in a pandemic. But what we've demonstrated over the last few months is that we are able to rapidly stand up these mass vaccination sites as needed when we need to vaccinate more of the population quickly. We did this back in 2009 with H1N1. Obviously we're doing it now as well. And if the situation arises where we have to do it in the future, we'll be ready. But I think we'll be more reliant on that permanent infrastructure that we already have in place.
Thank you. Go ahead, Juliet.
Okay, switching gears, and this is for you and Chief Holmes. An arrest was made very early this morning in the murder of one-year-old DeVelle Gardner. And I was wondering if you could talk about that in light of the conversations we're having this morning now about gun violence.
Yeah, this is a powerful moment of justice. I went out to Bed-Stuy. I spent time with DeVelle's mom and grandmother. It was just the most heartbreaking thing in the world. It's absolutely the saddest thing in the world that a one-year-old killed because of the recklessness of a horrible, violent person. And there had to be justice here. There had to be consequences, and thank God it's finally happening. And it's a message to everyone that now we're coming out of the pandemic. We're moving forward as a city. The courts are coming back to life. NYPD is getting guns off the streets at a record rate. There's a lot that's about to change and a lot of justice that will finally be meted out. Chief Holmes, you want to add?
Yes. As I said earlier, there'll probably be a press conference by District Attorney Gonzalez later today. But that's part of the long-term investigations our great detectives have been handling. And there were numerous subjects apprehended, various acts of violence, and 2 specifically for the homicide of DeVelle Gardner. As most of you remember, July 12th, that very dark day when the one-year-old, like the mayor said, was met with his demise as a result of simple recklessness of these gang members who are now taken off our streets.
Amen. Thank you.
Next, we have Andrew Siff from WNBC.
Like WNYC, they're a very good station as well.
Andrew, you are quick, quick with the quip.
You have to be in this world. Mayor, today is Nurses Day, as you mentioned. I would like to go back to something you said at the start of the pandemic, which is that you'd like to throw the biggest parade in the history of New York City for nurses, first responders, and others who helped us survive the pandemic. You have about 7 months left in office. Do you think that credibly the largest parade in the history of New York can happen in the next 7 months?
I think you're going to see an amazing parade. You're going to see it in the next few months. And we're going to welcome and back the city, but at the same time, we're going to thank our heroes, our healthcare heroes, our first responders, our essential workers. It's going to be one of the great parades of all time for the spirit of it, unquestionably. So, yeah, we're going to have a lot more to say on that soon because we're starting to open up open up again, and it's time to have that parade. Go ahead, Andrew.
Shifting gears, the mayor's race, there's a new poll that indicates Eric Adams pulling ahead of Andrew Yang for the first time with 47 days to go. One of the central themes of Eric Adams' campaign has been safety and New Yorkers needing to feel safe. Do you feel like that might be what's behind a shift, if you believe the polling, that this is New Yorkers voicing their concerns about safety?
Andrew, I'd say, first of all, I've been saying for weeks that this race for mayor still hadn't really consolidated. You know, for a long, long time, it was quite clear that people weren't paying attention yet, and there wasn't a lot of information out there yet. Now I think there's more and more information about each candidate starting to flow. There's more examination happening from the media and from the public. It makes sense that now is when you're going to see things really start to shape up. I remember at pretty much the same point in 2013 is when, you know, I went from being a candidate back in the pack to eventually becoming the front runner. So I think this is the natural time when people focus, and unquestionably, folks are rightfully going to be concerned about public safety. I think it's maybe one of the factors, but I don't think it's ever just one factor. The public is looking for a leader to help us continue our recovery. That's the bottom line.
Next question goes to Paul Liotta from the Staten Island Advance.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for taking my question.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm handling something. I'm well, sir. How are you?
Good.
I'm handling something on Intro 2186, the City Council's comprehensive long-term planning legislation. Just want to get your position on it.
Paul, you got to ask me a little more specifically. I was briefed on it a while back, but it was at least a month or two ago. So tell me what you're specifically interested in.
Specifically, what do you think it would mean for member deference and for the more residential parts of the city, particularly those zoned for single-family housing?
Yeah, I don't want to give you an imperfect answer because, again, it's a little while since I last looked at this. I think, you know, we've created an approach to land use in this city that's pretty balanced right now, where the voices of communities really matter. And the process, you know, it could be made quicker for sure. I'd like to see ways of doing that. But what it does well is creates a true community voice and a real give and take where community needs are addressed. So I think we have to be smart about preserving the many good elements of it. I know there were some concerns we had about that legislation, but I want to make sure I'm really specific and accurate. So we'll get back with you on that. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you for that. I'm also handling something on, there's 4 local school communities that are raising concerns about a 100-man homeless shelter planned in Stapleton within a 5-minute walk of each of the schools. I just wanted to get a sense of how you'd like to address those concerns and what you would say to those school communities.
We want to always be careful around any kind of facility near a school community. And what has to be done right is careful work with the community, all city agencies, obviously including Homeless Services and NYPD, to make sure it's a safe and secure environment. At the same time, we have to make sure that those who, God forbid, become homeless, remember, homeless people nowadays, more and more, who end up in shelter are working people who struggle to make ends meet, end up in shelter, need to be close to their home communities as part of their pathway back out of shelter. And we've asked every community to have shelters that represent their share of homeless folks in the shelter system. That's what we've been doing now for years. It was an important reform, and it's been working. So that's why we've chosen the sites, but we have to always be smart about ensuring they're safe and working with the local community.
Next, we have Sophia Chang from Gothamist.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, Sophia, how you doing?
I'm good. So about this plan to vaccinate tourists, the vaccines take 2 weeks to kick in. So how would that work with outbreaks or prevention of outbreaks? And separately, do you plan to track the vaccine status of tourists?
On the second part, Sophia, no such plan at this moment. We'll certainly continue to look consistently at changing dynamics and the data and the science, and as we've made every decision, our healthcare leadership will really lead the way in determining if we need to ever look at something like that. But I think the big reality in this country is more and more people getting vaccinated all the time. I saw the number the other day. It's something like 2 million vaccinations per day nationally. Even with the slowdown, there's still a huge number of people getting vaccinated. That's what's changed this environment, is exactly what our doctors said all along. If enough people got vaccinated, it would change the reality of COVID, and it's happening. So that reality, in terms of your first part of your question, look, the fact is the more people get vaccinated, the better for all of us. It's an interconnected country. It's an interconnected world. The more people get vaccinated, the better. If people are visiting us here and we have the ability to vaccinate them, it's a show of goodwill. It's a welcome. It will be helpful to us in the long run any way you slice it. Go ahead, Sophia.
Thank you. And there have been some recent reports that vaccination rates among NYPD and police staff are lower than the rest of the city's rates, and just 39% of NYPD officers have received at least one dose. What's the reason for the low rate of vaccination in NYPD, and what can the police leadership in the city do to encourage more vaccination within the department, given their exposure to the public?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sophia. Look, again, everything is done on a voluntary basis. Everyone's an individual. Every officer has a different view. Like many, many New Yorkers, I think there's some people that just wanted to wait a while. There's some people that still have unanswered questions. We got to keep reaching out and answering the concerns. And I think you'll see more and more people get vaccinated as a result. But certainly one of the things we'll do is keep reaching out through our whole city workforce, keep encouraging folks, making it easy, answering questions, and I think that'll have an impact over time.
Next, we have Henry Goldman from Bloomberg.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. Henry, how you been?
I'm good. I'm good. I wanted to ask you, going back to your first topic of public safety, about a year ago during the Floyd demonstrations, Black Lives Matter, you talked about removing about $1 billion from the police department and putting them into other public safety and crime fighting strategies that don't involve the police. This latest budget has a slight increase in the NYPD budget. Can you explain why you changed your mind about this, or why you didn't follow through with what you said last year?
Henry, respectfully, I think you're leading the witness, my friend. We did follow through. We laid out a series of changes. It was beyond $1 billion if you look at expense and capital budget. We followed through on all those commitments. We're continuing them. Exactly the point you raised, moving functions to the civilian side, in some cases reinvesting resources in other types of community needs. All that happened, and it's continuing. The new budget, the reason you see a very small increase is some new federal aid that came in. You see some new information technology costs, and you see some reform initiatives that the City Council wanted in the reform package that required additional civilian personnel for the NYPD. But when you add all that together, it's a very small increase in the scheme of things, and all the previous commitments continue to be kept. So I think we're in the right place. Go ahead, Henry.
Okay. But the bottom line is that you're spending more, not less. I accept your answer, and I thank you for it. On the vaccinations, the levels of vaccinations are going down precipitously. And in your presentation today, you talked about 3.75 million vaccinations as 75% toward the goal of 5 million. But that 3.7 million is only first dose. It's not a full vaccination number. And so I'm wondering, given the precipitous drop in people getting vaccinated, whether the city is in a position to reach its goal of 5 million persons vaccinated by the end of June.
Yeah, Henry, it's a great question. Look, I don't agree on precipitous drop because we've seen it for a pretty brief period of time, and we're about to put a lot of new approaches into play that I think will help to compensate. From day one, 6.8 million doses. So now we have, in terms of our 5 million goal, we're 55.6% of the way in terms of those already fully vaccinated, and obviously it's the first week of May. But if you look at the first dose, I want to make sure I articulated this clear. I'm glad you asked it. 74.3% of the goal has been reached in terms of first dose. The point I was making is first dose is almost a guarantee of second dose. We're seeing about 95% of people get a first dose in New York City, follow through and get the second dose. We've seen that very, very consistently. So this says to me that practically we can now account for 75% effectively of our goal. Now we got to go out and secure the last 25%. And I feel good about it. I think it's harder than it was. It was harder than we started out because of the challenges around Johnson & Johnson. We absolutely believed when we kept talking about this number that Johnson & Johnson was going to play a crucial role. It hasn't been playing as big a role. That's an issue. That's a problem. But with enough creativity, I think we can still get there.
We have time for 2 more questions today. The next question goes to Nolan from the Post.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Hey, Nolan, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. And on a very unrelated baseball note, I wonder if you still back getting rid of pitcher hitters, considering Jacob deGrom is literally the only source of offense in that pack.
You know, that is actually a very fair point. It's talk about DIY. It's like no one else wants to hit on the Mets when he's pitching, so he has to go do it all himself. But I think, I still think, I bet Jacob wouldn't mind if the Mets got another bat in there to take the place for him. Someone alive and awake who likes to hit a baseball. I think Jacob would really approve of that. And that's going to be another part of our, I want to figure out with our Jacob deGrom support plan, you know, a massive city infusion of dollars to find the best available bat and, you know, bring them in immediately to the Mets to address this crisis. Go ahead, Nolan.
Yeah, well, I guess to the first question, you said yesterday that neither you nor the school's chancellor were aware about the retitling of Columbus Day. Having been involved in at least 2 separate Columbus controversies over the statue and whether or not it would be replaced and over the placement of a statue honoring Mother Cabrini, how does this go unnoticed? How weren't you briefed about the changes to the school calendar?
Cabrini is not Columbus, I want to note that, but to the point, Nolan, I'm as miffed as you are, honestly. It's obviously something that should have been raised to the chancellor, should have been raised to me. It is a truly massive, sprawling bureaucracy. Somewhere before this chancellor became chancellor, someone put this in motion. They didn't brief me. They should have. They should have briefed her. It was not the right way to do things. It just wasn't. And once I heard about it, we immediately addressed it. I am a very proud Italian American. It was very important that we continue to honor Italian Americans and all the contributions of Italian Americans to this city, which are absolutely extraordinary, and to this nation. But the way we're doing it in this instance, I think, is fair, makes the point clearly. But of course it should have been brought to our attention. It's not even close. Go ahead, Nolan.
So do you know when the decision was made? Do you know how the decision was made? Do you know who made the decision?
No, no, and no. Our team will happily try and track it back. But the most important thing here is once we saw it, we changed it because it wasn't the right decision.
Our last question of the day goes to Steve Burns from WCBS 880.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
Good, Steve. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I wanted to ask about crime as it relates to the subways. I know the NYPD transit chief at the last MTA board meeting accused MTA leaders of fear-mongering over crime in the subway. Governor Cuomo seemed to echo a lot of the MTA's comments. So I'd love to get your input and Chief Holmes's input if possible. Do you feel like the governor is now fear-mongering over crime in the subway? Is it not as bad as the MTA and he make it seem?
Of course. Steve, look, leaders are supposed to help people move forward and tell them when something's actually working. The NYPD is doing an outstanding job making the subways safe. They have for a long time. Overall crime in the subways has gone down. Chief Kathy O'Reilly has done a great job, and I think her frustration is very real as a lifelong public safety professional. Hearing the governor and hearing the leadership of the MTA putting down the work of the men and women of the NYPD who are actually getting the job done, I share the frustration. And as a real New Yorker who lives in this city, has taken the subway all my life, I wouldn't hesitate at all to take the subway. I will be taking the subway a lot. My children take the subway all the time. If you said to one of my kids, oh, you shouldn't go on the subway, it's not safe, they would laugh you out of the room. They would tell you you clearly couldn't be a real New Yorker because they couldn't think of life without taking the subway. And let's get real. Let's tell people it's safe because it is safe, and it's part of our recovery. It's part of how we come back. The more people go back to the subway, the safer it will be, the stronger the recovery will be. Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks. And following up on that, the MTA's case here is that first, per rider crime has gone up. If you take the ridership drop into account, then the crime rate has gone up. And second, that there are things that happen there that aren't necessarily reflected in the crime stats, like harassment and people in need of mental health support. So does the proposition at all give you any credence that there is a need for more officers in the subway, or is that still completely off the table?
Steve, we've put more officers in the subway. It's had a very positive effect. The NYPD's made clear that they'll make adjustments whenever needed. The officers that were surged into the subway helped address some real issues, and whenever they have to do that again, they will. But I want to be clear about the overall reality. We went through a pandemic that took millions of people out of the subways, changed the entire nature of things. We're now coming back strong. You see the ridership going up all the time. You see the city coming back to life. You see the economy coming back to life. Whole new ballgame. Go back to before the pandemic. 1 index crime per million riders is where we were. A level of safety we had never seen before in the history of New York City subways. That's what the NYPD achieved. And they're going to continue that progress, especially as people come back. So, you know, let's believe in our city. Let's believe in the NYPD. Let's believe we can move forward. And to me, that's what leaders should be talking about, how we move forward. That's what a recovery requires. And I'll conclude with that, everyone. Look, today we're talking about so many things that prove this city is coming back. Our City Artist Corps is going to be so exciting. The amazing work being done in our vaccination effort. And you saw Nurse Tanika. That's a true New Yorker, out there at the front line making things happen, believing in this city. The incredible work of the NYPD, and you're going to hear a lot more about that today, getting guns off the streets. This is how we come back. I believe in this city 110%. I believe in the people of this city. I think New Yorkers were heroes in this crisis. Anyone who doesn't believe in New York City, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, because this city is coming back. Why? Because we have a magic ingredient called New Yorkers. So get ready for the greatest comeback ever. Thank you, everybody.